is up, everybody? It's your boy Travis, aka Matsu here, and today I am bringing you one of my favorite characters of all time to build and play with, Mimic on the Chaos symbol after the release of Girl Power. So this character got a lot of tools instead. But before we actually get into the video, make sure you guys like, comment, share, subscribe. Go check out my Patreon where I do coaching at the $10 level, and also go check out my Twitch where I stream Wednesday, Thursday, Friday at 5 o'clock. Anyways, let's get into it. So Mimic is a 6-hander with 25 health and the Chaos, Earth, and Evil symbol. When committing cards to pass a check, you may commit one asset as if it were a foundation. That's a static response. Once per turn, after you check an asset, add one attack with a check value of 3 from your discard pile to your hand. Response, after you commit an asset, this attack gets +2 or -1 damage. So, obviously there's a lot going on with this character. He doesn't have a very high health total, which means we kind of have to make up for the lack of health in our 6-hander with the defense that we play in our deck. Now, this is a little bit harder than it may seem. We're not exactly built to be a hyper defensive deck. We are just trying to go in as soon as possible, as you will see soon when I talk about the attack lineup. But first, let's start with the foundations. I play 3 copies of Uratogi Expertise. Uratogi Expertise is a 2/5 with a 3 mid block. Form, commit, draw 1 card, only playable if you have played an attack this turn. Like I said, we're really trying to be aggressive, so we want that extra draw. It's really important. It also has a Team Uratogi form, which doesn't matter because we're not a Team Uratogi character. Next card, 1 copy of Abandoning All Inhibitions. It is a 3/5 with a 2 mid block and a Villain Enhance. Commit, if this is the first attack you have played this turn, it does not count towards progressive difficulty for the rest of the turn. Now this is very good. It helps extend our strings. It is essentially commit for +1 to all of our checks for the rest of the turn, which is very strong. On to the next one. Play 4 copies of Internet Sensation. Internet Sensation is a 1/4 with a 2 low block. Response, after you play an attack, if you did not commit any foundations to pass the check, that attack gets +1 damage. So it's essentially spammable damage in our character that commits assets to pass checks. And Deadlock Enhance, your next check to play an attack gets +1. So very good Deadlock if for whatever reason the game gets to that, because it helps us pass our checks. But we're mostly using it for the response that gives us bonus damage whenever we don't commit a foundation to pass the check to play an attack, which is pretty easy when we're playing a bunch of assets that we can commit instead because of our character. 4 copies of Nice Try. Nice Try is a 2/5 with a 3 low block. Enhance, commit. This attack gets -2 speed. Response, after your rival's combat phase begins, ready this foundation playable while committed. This card might just be the best foundation, or one of the best foundations that we have access to in the game in general. This card is so powerful. Just being able to play super aggressively and kind of tap these resources that we don't need on our turn willy-nilly, but also still have them back for our opponent's turn is an extremely powerful effect. So definitely an easy 4 of. 4 basic training. Basic training is a 0/5 with a 2 mid block. Response, once per turn, after you play an attack, it gets +1 damage. And Deadlock response, after an attack is played, it gets +1 speed. Playable while committed. So, yet again, another good Deadlock ability if the game goes that far. But for the most part, we're just using this for the response. After you play an attack, it gets +1 damage. Because the damage breakpoint will matter for things like Twisting Azure if our opponent has damage reduction, or just kind of to help us get that extra little bit of damage that we need to get over the finish line. Next, we have 4 copies of Easily Excited. It is a 0/5 with a 2 high block. Response, once per turn after an attack is played, it gets +1 speed and gains Taunt if it does not already have it. So this is just another foundation that gives stats for us. It's a 0 diff, so it's easy for us to pass it on turn 1. Extends our builds. and just gives stats, which is very good. 4 copies of Chivalrous Competitor. Chivalrous Competitor is a 1/5 with a 3 low block. Enhance, flip, that's cost. Both players draw 1 card. Response, before one of your foundations would be destroyed or flipped due to your rival's non-character effect, flip this foundation instead. So, this card is just flipped to have us draw a card on offense, basically, which is very important in our deck that is just trying to find and assemble the kill as soon as possible with the least amount of effort. So we want as much draw and filter power as we have access to, and this card is very important for that. It also is just good protection for our other foundations that do more, right? Like our opponent tries to target flip something, we just flip this instead. 4 copies of Training with Gunhead. Training with Gunhead is a 1/5 and a 3 low block. Enhance, if the check to play this attack was modified by an effect, this attack gets +1 speed. Enhance, remove, reduce the damage of this throw attack to 2. So we're really not using that second effect that much. It could come up, but we're mainly using the first effect. If the check to play this attack was modified by an effect, this attack gets 1 speed. Because we have cards like Trigger, which gives +1 to our check, Double Jab Pummel, which gives +2 to our next check, Twisting Azure, which gives 1 to all our checks, Gigantification Swing, which gives essentially +1 to all of our checks to play attacks because we're playing mono keywords for Gigantification. But yeah, just a all-around very good generic stat pump that's really valuable on our character. Now on to the attacks, which are arguably the most important part of the deck aside from Trigger, because Trigger is just crazy in Mimic. It's easily his best card. But anyways, 4 copies of Camouflage Counter. Camouflage Counter is a 4-diff 3 check with a 2 high block, 2 low for 4. Response, card pool. After another attack deals damage, add this card to the top of your deck. Your next check to play a card gets +1. And then it also has an Asui response, which we don't care about because we're not playing Asui. This card is very good. It looks very unassuming at first, but you have to understand that once Mimic assembles a decent amount of stat pump, even moves that have low base stats are extremely threatening. Training Weights gives just 1 billion damage. We have stats from Training with Gunhead and Basic Training and all of these other stat pump cards. But the interaction that this is in the deck for is specifically this card with Uratogi Expertise. So basically what happens, you deal damage, or you play Camouflage Counter, you stun one, they block it because it's pretty easily blockable. And then you just continue, you play another move, and then you get a second. So you just put it back on top of your deck, your next check to play a card gets +1, and then you form Uratogi Expertise to draw a card because you've played an attack this turn, which draws you into your Camouflage Counter, and now you've cleared a 3 from the top of your deck, and you still have +1 to your next check, which fulfills the must be modified for Training with Gunhead, also just makes it easier for you to pass your string, and clears a card out of Progressive, which is all very good. On to the next card, we have 4 copies of Gigantification Swing. So Gigantification Swing is a 5-diff 3 check, 4 mid for 5 with a 2 high block. Enhance, spend 1 momentum. Your checks to play Charge, Fury, and Slam attacks get +1 this turn. So that's very, very good ability. And then response, after you play this card, your rival's next check to play a card gets -2. And it's a Charge, Fury, Slam weapon. So it does indeed +1 to its own check if you play another one after you play the first one usually. But that is not actually the main part of why we use this card. It's actually just because this card is essentially a Breaker 2 high block that we can pick up with our character for defense, which just gives us that just enough defense to get us back to our turn so we can hopefully make our opponent explode with our very offensive attack lineup. On to our next card, we have 4 copies of Freezer Burn. Freezer Burn is a 4 diff, 4 low for 4 with a 2 low block and a 3 check, charge and ranged. Response, destroy one foundation after your rival plays a non-character ability during this attack, cancel it. And then Enhance, discard the top 3 cards of your deck as cost, your rival readies one of your foundations. Now, this is very good because we have a lot of control over what foundations we're going to be committing with what our character does, because we can commit assets to pass checks as well. Kind of the same logic with Internet Sensation. So ideally, this card is just going to be used to ready Uratogi Expertise to get us that extra draw and try and find us the gas that we need to get there. This card is also just very good because it cancels important non-character abilities that we don't want to deal with. Basically just anything you wouldn't want to deal with. Just think about it like that, rather than specific examples, because there are plenty. On to the next card. Now this is arguably one of the most broken attacks that exists in our format. There's no reason not to play it in a character like this, but Twisting Azure Inferno has been a mainstay in Mimic decks for essentially since the character has been released. It is a 4 diff, 4 mid for 4 with a 3 check and a 2 mid block, charge and ranged. Enhance, if this attack's damage is 7 or greater for the rest of the turn, your checks get +1 and your rival's checks to play blocks get -1. Okay, that's crazy, right? It also has response after you play an action, this attack gets +2 damage, which doesn't come up in our deck because we don't play actions, but that's fine. Because that's not why we're using it. We are trying to assemble training weights and Twisting Azure, because with our character and training weights, we commit to give 1 damage with the training weights and then respond with our character to give it 2 more, which is conveniently the magic number 7 to turn on Twisting Azure Inferno. So, you know, that's obviously very, very good. On to the next card. Yet another contentious attack that has existed and been placed in Chaos Mimic for a very long time. We have Double Jab Pummel. Double Jab Pummel is a 4 diff, 3 mid for 5 with a 3 check and a 1 high block, charge, punch, combo with a charge. Combo Enhance, if this attack is blocked, draw 2 cards and discard 2 cards, your next check to play a card gets +2. And then it also has a Deadlock Enhance that says your next check to play a card gets +5. So, this card is crazy. This card is essentially unblockable for the most part, because if your opponent blocks it, they are more than likely just digging you into more gas, filtering you into the cards that you need to kill them. So this card essentially just reads, Combo Enhance is unblockable in most situations. Most of the time your opponent just will not block this card unless they have something super profitable to block with. Think like a Rejuve Smash, possibly a big breaker block like Big Fist Bash. But even if it's like a breaker block, your next check to play a card gets +2, so you essentially have just canceled out their breaker, which is very strong. Anyways, on to the assets. We play 4 copies of Training Weights. This is our deck's bread and butter. We want to see this card all the time, no matter what, on turn 1, as soon as possible. Because when we build this card says essentially, commit, this attack gets +1 damage for each time this enhance has been played this combat phase, and then it gets 2 damage from Mimic. So 2 diff, 5 check, 2 mid block. It also has Enhance Commit a Foundation, ready this asset, playable while committed, and Enhance Discard 1 Momentum, ready this asset, playable while committed. Now, most of the time, we don't really need to ready it. We usually just use it to activate Twisting Azure, and then we just kind of go for there with the damage that we have in our stage and the other stat pump. But we do have plenty of ways to ready it, i.e. Freezer Burn, untapping a foundation, which we can then use to ready the training weights. We can also use Trigger to untap foundations and ready training weights. There are just plenty of ways for us to ready it if we need the extra damage, because we will just have a lot of check modification that will make it very easy. That we won't have to commit that many foundations when we're going in for a kill string, so this card is just great. Speaking of trigger, trigger is a 2/5 with a 2 high block. Response removed, lose 2 health. After you play an ability on your character, draw 1 card and ready 1 foundation that is not. It's combat phase. And then the part that we came here for, which is mimic response once per turn after you make a check to play a card. That check is +1, playable while committed. So basically what you do is you use your trigger to pass a check, respond, mimic, give it 2 damage if you played an attack. And then you can still use the trigger again to respond and give +1 to the check later on. So it's essentially 2 foundations, aka it is nice try, but it works on offense and defense in Mimic, not just on defense. Yeah, this card is crazy. If you're playing Mimic, it just does so much. Even when you aren't using it to commit and get damage, it digs for more attacks, which is what we need to kill people, right? And so, on to the next card, and arguably the reason why Chaos Mimic has come back up into relevance the way it has, Knots Flask. We're playing 4 of it. Knots Flask is crazy. It is a 1/5 with a 2 mid block. After you build this asset, you add 3 booze counters to it. If there are no booze counters on this card, your attacks get -2 speed. And then enhance, commit, remove 1 booze counter. This attack gets +3 or -3 damage. That's crazy. So in Mimic, it says commit for +5 damage or -4 damage. And then enhance, once per turn, mill 3. If you did not mill an attack this way, add 1 booze counter to this card. And it also has this innate synergy with Mimic where it fuels our discard pile so we can see more attacks that we want to pick up with our character. So all around, this card is just crazy. If you see multiple of these, it is so hard to kill a Mimic through multiple Knots Flasks. And it's also just so much damage, right? Like, committing this for 5 damage on any of your attacks is crazy. On to the last card in the deck, we play 1 Battle Arena. It is a 2/5 with a 2 mid block and the terrain keyword, meaning only 1 terrain can be in play at any given point. While this card is in your stage, at the start of the end phase, players who dealt damage this turn may add the top card of their deck to their momentum. That's very good for our deck because we can use the momentum to ready training weights if for whatever reason when we went in we didn't kill our opponent. And then it also just has response commit after you make a check to play an attack. That check is +2. So yet again, continuing the trend of things that are essentially 2 foundations in our character, because we respond, give +2 to our check, and then it also just gives 2 damage to the attack that we were trying to resolve, or -1 damage, I guess, but that's not going to come up. We're not going to give our own attack -1 damage, but you could. But yeah, I think that this deck is extremely strong. I think in the next format, this will probably be an outlier deck. Twisting Azure is still busted. I feel like this card should have been hit a long time ago, probably, but c'est la vie. Anyways, thanks everyone for watching. I really appreciate it. Yet again, make sure you guys like, comment, share, subscribe. Go check out the socials and my Twitch and the Patreon where you can subscribe at the $10 level to get coaching from me. Thanks, and have a wonderful rest of your day. This has been Matsu signing out.
What is up, Matsu Nation? Thank you for watching till the end of the video. If you enjoyed, like, comment, and subscribe. And check out all my socials and my Patreon. I hope you all have a wonderful day, and sayonara.